The 100-year lie that built your grocery store. The peach that lied. The sticker said fresh, the flesh said summer. But the woman at checkout didn't know this peach started its journey months earlier, groomed, chilled, and coached to look perfect today. She bit in at her car, expecting fireworks, got mealy silence instead. Meanwhile, across the store, she grabbed apples that were crisp as October, though October was long gone. The sign promised picked at peak ripeness. Technically true. Just not this week, this state, or this season. The truth hiding in plain sight. Freshness isn't a day, it's a system. When fresh meant yesterday. Once fresh was a clock, bread baked at dawn, milk delivered in glass by noon, greens cut from a garden and wilted by dinner if you waited too long. Cities rose around markets where proximity was everything. You ate what the land and calendar allowed, and when the season ended, so did the flavor. No one called it seasonal, it was just food. Then cold air learned to travel. Railcars outfitted with ice in the late 19th century became mechanical refrigeration by the early 20th, turning geography into a negotiable detail. After World War II, the system multiplied: bigger trucks, better compressors, standardized containers, highways drawn like arteries across a country that decided strawberries belong to February if you can pay. The grocery store changed its promise. Not what arrived, but what you expect. Meanwhile, food science found ways to slow time. We learned that fruit breathes, that oxygen feeds ripening, carbon dioxide reins it in, and temperature dictates the pace. Controlled atmosphere rooms sealed the clock inside airtight walls, oxygen lowered to a sliver, carbon dioxide tuned, humidity steady, temperature just above freezing. An apple that would have been gone by winter could sleep until spring, then summer, then fall. When it woke, it still snapped like October. It wasn't trick photography. It was respiration, slowed to a crawl. On farms, breeders chased traits that matched the logistics. Late ripening, firm skins, tolerance to cold, storage, and handling. Washington State University crossed one apple for flavor, another for durability, and years later sold growers a variety designed for the long haul: late harvest, long storage, predictable texture. Growers lined up not just for taste, but for schedule. The fruit didn't only fit the market, it fit the calendar the market demanded. Out on tropical coasts, containers learned to carry climates. Reefers, refrigerated boxes with their own plugins, kept bananas green for the voyage, delaying yellows until stores needed them. A port in Ecuador, a ship with built-in cranes to bypass local bottlenecks, a quiet facility in San Diego every Sunday, reliability disguised distance. Bananas became the default fruit because logistics loved them, not because they tasted better than peaches. Elsewhere, chemistry went to work on the surface. Fruit loses water. Water loss means shriveled dullness, less weight. So someone found that a thin edible wax, carnauba from palms, shellac from resin, sealed in moisture and restored shine. A small brush stroke at a packing line became a silent contract. We'll keep it looking like it just came off the tree. Fungicides intervened where storage invited mold. Ethylene, the hormone that whispers ripen, was both enemy and ally. Inhibited to survive the journey, pulsed into ripening rooms to finish the job on schedule. This wasn't cheating as much as choreography. Meanwhile, cities grew used to aisles that ignored weather. Grapes crossed hemispheres to bridge seasons, Chile to Philadelphia, Mexico to Arizona, California to everywhere, fumigated, inspected, kept cold, sorted by size, and presented as if vines nearby never took a break. The convenience rewired expectations. A missed shipment felt like a moral failure, not a supply chain hiccup. But the peach never signed up for this. It bruises when you look at it wrong. It ripens as a sprint, not a marathon. It defies the wax and the room and the box. So we get the peach that lied, not because someone faked it, but because we asked it to be something it isn't, predictable. The lie is structural. The store says fresh and means controlled, temperature, gas, timing, surface. We hear fresh and think yesterday. Both can be true. Only one tastes like summer on the first bite. The time machine. Controlled atmosphere, CA, storage. To understand why October crunch shows up in May, we need to step inside the rooms where time slows down. Warehouse workers call them CA rooms, controlled atmosphere, but growers talk about them like weather you can dial. On the outside, they look like blank walls and heavy doors. On the inside, they're airtight chambers with a single job: keep fruit alive, not awake. Here's the stakes. Fruit breathes. It pulls in oxygen, gives off carbon dioxide, burns its own sugars for energy, and marches toward ripeness whether we're ready or not. For apples, that march ends fast, weeks in normal cold storage, and they soften, lose acids, drift from bright to flat. The problem isn't quality control, it's biology. So the industry learned to control biology. The action starts right after harvest. Forklifts stack bins of apples by the hundreds inside a sealed room. The door shuts, compressors hum, and the air itself changes. Oxygen, normally 21%, is bled down to a sliver, 2, maybe 3%. Carbon dioxide is held low and steady. Temperature lands just above freezing. Humidity stays high enough to prevent shrivel. The fruit doesn't freeze, it doesn't rot, it just slows. What nobody knew a century ago is routine now. Respiration responds to oxygen like a dimmer switch. Lower the oxygen and the apple's internal engine idles. Starches don't rush to sugars. Acids don't vanish. Firmness holds. Meanwhile, low temperature suppresses enzymes and microbes. It's not preservation in the pickle jar sense. It's hibernation, metabolism reduced to a crawl, flavor chemistry paused at a sweet, early chapter. Impact shows up months later on a grocery shelf half a country away. That Honeycrisp that snaps in June, it wasn't doused in something exotic, it slept. Or more precisely, it respired at a fraction of normal for 6, 8, even 10 months. When the market signals a gap, warehouse software releases pallets from CA into regular cold rooms where crews pack, box, and ship. To the shopper, it reads as dependable supply. To the grower, it reads as options. Sell early for cash flow or hold for better prices without trashing quality. Meanwhile, something else was happening in those rooms: decisions. Not every bin goes to deep sleep. Teams test maturity before harvest with starch iodine tests, firmness gauges, and soluble solids readings. Fruit destined for late spring pickup gets picked a shade earlier. Fruit for immediate sales stays on the tree longer and bypasses the deepest storage. It's triage as strategy. The same orchard fills September and April. The difference is timing and atmosphere. There was one problem: not every apple can handle this. Some varieties scald, some lose texture, some brown internally. Breeding programs got the memo. Traits like late harvest and storage tolerance suddenly mattered as much as taste. Washington State University's WA38, later marketed as Cosmic Crisp, checks those boxes. It ripens late. It tolerates months under low oxygen without turning mealy. It lands into spring with acids intact. Growers pay royalties not just for flavor, but for compatibility with the time machine. On the floor of a modern facility, the scale looks absurd. Think rows of sealed rooms down the length of 7 football fields, 5 levels high, each chamber wired to sensors that watch oxygen, CO2, temperature, humidity. Robotic carriers move pallets at night, reorganizing queues so the oldest lots come out first. During the day, doors equalize, pallets roll to packing lines, and trucks back into bays cooled to keep the chain unbroken. The choreography is quiet, almost polite. The control is absolute. For apples, CA unlocked a national habit: American-grown fruit all year, domestic stickers in July. It also changed money. Without CA, the harvest glut would crater prices. With CA, supply spreads out, cash flows year-round, and producers hedge against bad years by stretching good ones. The rooms are expensive: airtight construction, scrubbers, gas analyzers, compressors, but the payback is in stability. You can plan when the fruit itself is on pause. Meanwhile, consumer language stayed simple. Fresh, crisp, picked at peak, all technically true. The peak might have happened in October. The crispness is held in November's cold. It's not a lie in the legal sense. It's a lie of omission. The season was edited out. What nobody sees is the door closing, the oxygen dropping, the months ticking by on paper while the apple's own clock barely moves. There's a limit. CA can't fix bruises or make a bland apple sing. It can't turn a delicate peach into a shelf-stable promise. It rewards fruit bred to endure, penalizes varieties that peak hard and fade fast. That's why you don't get a July avalanche of heirloom pears in March. The machine slows time, but it still respects biology's breakpoints. In the end, CA didn't just preserve fruit. It preserved an expectation that nature should match our calendar. The rooms make that look easy. The truth is more precise and more industrial than any farm stand sign suggests. The makeup: waxes, coatings, and fungicides. Walk a packing line and you'll see the moment fresh gets its final costume. Fruit comes out of wash tanks looking duller than it did on the tree. Washing strips natural waxes, the thin cuticle that slows water loss and gives a gentle sheen. Left alone, that cleaned fruit dehydrates, shrivels, bruises easier, and looks tired long before it tastes bad. So the industry puts the wax back, just not the same wax nature made. Carnauba from palm leaves, shellac derived from resin secreted by lac insects, sometimes food-grade polyethylene emulsions. They're edible, they're regulated, and they do a simple, valuable thing. They seal. A film a few microns thick lowers moisture loss and oxygen exchange. That means less weight lost to evaporation, slower shrivel, and a surface that reads healthy under fluorescent lights. The shine isn't there to fool you into eating mold. It's there so the apple looks like the apple you think you're buying. At a citrus house, workers pull fruit from brushes onto a conveyor that passes under sprayers. A faint mist lays down an emulsion, soft pads buff it to an even coat. By the time it hits the bagger, the oranges glow. The label might say, coated with food-grade wax to maintain freshness. That's the accurate part. This is moisture management marketed as beauty. Meanwhile, coatings do more than shine. They turn the fruit's skin into a semi-permeable membrane. Permeability matters. Too tight and you trap respiration gases, trigger off flavors, or invite internal browning. Too loose and you haven't solved the problem, so packers match coating to commodity. Lemons tolerate heavier wax, apples get lighter hits, cucumbers often get a thin layer to avoid spongy skins. It's not one-size-fits-all makeup. It's a tuned jacket for a biological engine that's still running. Ethylene sits in the background like a metronome. In one building, banana stems were painted earlier with stem sealers to slow ethylene leakage, then loaded green into reefers. In another, pallets roll into ripening rooms where ethylene is pulsed in at parts per million to synchronize color change before a promotion weekend. The same hormone that's suppressed for transport becomes the switch flipped to finish the job. Coatings don't stop ethylene. They temper its conversation with oxygen and water at the skin. Then there's rot. Post-harvest is a wet world. Dump tanks, high humidity cold rooms, condensation on steel. Fungi love it. Blue mold on apples, green mold on citrus, gray mold on berries. One spore missed at cull can bloom into a fuzzy epidemic on a pallet, and suddenly a truckload becomes a write-off. That's why fungicides enter the story here, not in the field alone. Packhouses apply post-harvest fungicides, imazalil, thiabendazole, through drench lines or wax emulsions to target surface pathogens that show up after harvest. For organic fruit, hot water dips, sanitation, and faster turn move the risk dial down without synthetic chemistry, but the core stakes are the same. A single infection can cascade through inventory. If that sounds clinical, watch a micro-story. In Philadelphia, inspectors crack open a Chilean grape container in February. The boxes are cold, the stems are green, the berries are firm. Weeks earlier, those grapes left a packhouse that sorted clusters under cold air, lightly sulfur dioxided liners to suppress mold, bagged and sealed. A few pallets will go to fumigation to clear a quarantine pest, a cost and stress the fruit must survive. At the terminal market, buyers check bloom, the natural powder on the skin that signals careful handling. They'll reject a pallet if the clusters sweat and mildew. No retailer wants that near their leafy set. The protection between vineyard and aisle is chemistry plus climate control plus speed. The visual language we built around this is simple. Shiny equals fresh, matte equals old. The truth is messier. A waxed apple can be weeks older than a dull one and still taste brighter because its acids were preserved in a CA room and its moisture guarded by a coating. A dull cucumber might be fresher but unprotected from the store's open-air dehydration. We taught ourselves to trust the cue that aligns with logistics, not just flavor. None of this turns bad fruit good. Waxes won't repair hail scars. Fungicides won't save a crushed shoulder. The makeup preserves what arrived intact and buys time. Time is money for a supply chain that spans hemispheres and seasons. It's also the variable that separates peaches from apples and truth from expectation on a summer afternoon in a parking lot. Bananas, green to gold by design. Bananas don't do seasons, they do schedules. That's the real trick. In Ecuador on a Tuesday morning, cutters step into rows of blue-bagged bunches and work in pairs, one machete, one shoulder. Foam pads slip between hands to keep bruises from starting a chain reaction. A cableway groans, a mule leans into the harness. The bunches glide to a shed where the first quiet edits begin. Hands cut from stalks, soapy tanks rinse field dust and latex, stems painted with a waxy seal to slow ethylene escaping from the wound. Right there, the goal is clear. Keep them breathing, just not yet living out loud. Cardboard boxes swallow bags, bags swallow hands. A truck door thumps. By midweek, Guayaquil chokes with reefers lined in Dole livery, inching toward a private terminal locals call Banana Puerto. The company owns the cranes because the port doesn't have them. It owns the Sunday schedule in San Diego because reliability beats congestion. This isn't romance, it's choreography at container scale. Here's why. Bananas ship green on purpose. If yellow appears in transit, USDA inspectors start thinking about unwanted hitchhikers and the fruit gets rejected. So the cold chain becomes a brake pedal. Reefers lock the pulp temperature in the mid-50s Fahrenheit, cold enough to slow respiration without chilling injury, power plugged in at every port and deck slot that can energize a container. Regular container ships don't have enough plugs for that many reefers. Dole solves that by sailing its own boats, fitted to feed this one commodity a constant stream north. 9 days later, a vessel slides past Point Loma and nudges into a quiet berth in San Diego. Customs and USDA take their samples. Forklifts bite into stacks. Pallets that left the tropics hard and green enter a distribution web that knows exactly when they'll need color. Because the secret isn't getting bananas to America, it's turning them yellow on command. Across the desert in Las Vegas, a grocery distribution center runs its ripening rooms like a hotel. Each room is a climate within a climate, temperature set, humidity steady, vents ready to breathe. Workers pull a few fingers from each incoming lot, slice and gauge the shade of the flesh, then sort pallets by stage, greens with greens, tinge with tinge. Ripening isn't a line, it's a series of lanes. Ethylene comes next. Not much, just a few parts per million, metronomed into the room for 24 to 48 hours. Ethylene tells cells to unlock enzymes, starches convert, pectin loosens, chlorophyll steps aside for carotenoids. Green turns gold, not as an accident of time, but as a controlled finish. From there, it's a race with a clock the company set itself. The rooms go quiet. Ethylene is vented. Fresh air dilutes the signal so the fruit doesn't sprint past the shelf. Pallets roll to outbound docks, flagged by stage for stores with different turnover speeds. A busy urban market gets more color. A slower suburban store takes firmer fruit to buy days on the display. Truck doors close. The chain holds. Meanwhile, in Costa Rica and Guatemala, the same dance fills a second and third weekly boat. Built-in gantries lift boxes where cranes don't exist. In Philadelphia, another partner handles Caribbean flows. In Miami, still another. The map looks improvised until you notice the repetition. Tuesday cut, Thursday port, Sunday arrival, Tuesday ripen, Thursday shelf. The fruit becomes the most punctual thing in a chaotic system. What nobody knew a century ago is basic here. Ethylene isn't good or bad, it's a tool. In the field, crews seal stems to keep it quiet. On ships, cold holds it at bay. In ripening rooms, a whisper of it synchronizes a continent's produce aisle. The win isn't flavor perfection, it's predictability. A mother in Omaha on a Wednesday can put 5 yellow bananas in a cart because a team in Nevada injected a gas into a room on Monday. There's a human edge to that precision. A longshoreman on Friday watches a temperature alarm blink and knows a box just slipped warm. He moves that pallet first. A ripening manager walks a row, taps a cluster, and decides to vent early because weekend traffic will be light. A produce clerk rotates hands so the sweetest sell fastest and tomorrow stays green enough to wait. Plenty can still go wrong, storms, strikes, power glitches, but the system's redundancy cushions the bruise. Bananas became America's favorite fruit not just because they're cheap or sweet, but because logistics adore them. They travel asleep, wake on cue, and stand up to handling, all the traits a year-round promise requires. The yellow you see is ripeness, yes, it's also design. Apples, the fruit that stops time, start in Wenatchee at dawn. Forklifts nose through mist, lifting wooden bins that hold September in their slats. The apples are cool from the night, firm under a thumb, and every bin has a destiny before it crosses the threshold. A tech marks lots with a grease pencil, early, mid, late, because timing starts before storage. They're not guessing. Weeks of starch iodine tests and firmness readings told them which rows could hibernate and which had to move. Inside, the air goes quiet. A steel door seals with a shudder. Computers pull oxygen down from 21% to 2%. Carbon dioxide stays low and steady. Temperature lands just above freezing. Humidity sits high. The apples don't freeze, they fall asleep. That's what it looks like on paper. In the cells, enzymes idle, starch conversion slows, acids hang on, crispness persists. The room isn't a fridge, it's a dial on metabolism. Meanwhile, crews triage the harvest with a bias toward the future. Fruit bound for April comes off the tree a beat earlier, firm, high starch, still bright with malic acid. Fruit aimed at October sits longer under the sun and bypasses the deepest sleep. They aren't chasing one ideal apple, they're populating a calendar. A grower can sell a chunk now to pay pickers and fuel, then hold the rest for months and still ship a bite that snaps. Walk the floor and scale starts to bend your sense of time. Rooms stack 5 high down a building as long as 7 football fields. Every chamber breathes through valves the size of dinner plates, watched by sensors and gas analyzers that sample air like a doctor taking vitals. At night, robotic pallet carriers prowl, swapping positions so the oldest lots sit closest to daylight. By morning, doors hiss, pallets roll, cold air equalizes, and the day's run joins the packing line. What nobody sees from the produce aisle is the ledger this enables. Without CA, September floods the market, prices collapse, and by December the best fruit is memory. With CA, volume spreads out, prices flatten, volatility drops. A bruising hailstorm in one valley can be softened because rooms across the highway held last year's surplus without it going soft. Stability is a trait you can taste because it's the reason the same variety tastes like itself in January. There was a catch. Not every apple tolerates the nap. Some varieties scald under low oxygen, some go woolly, some brown inside without warning. Breeders got busy. Washington State University's WA38, marketed as Cosmic Crisp, was built for this world. Late harvest, thick cuticle, storage tolerance that lets it sit 8, 10, even 12 months without losing its voice. Growers paid royalties and agreed to branding rules because the variety slots into a system where timing is profit. Micro-stories flicker under the lights. A QC tech presses a penetrometer into a Honeycrisp and reads 8 kilograms of force, still good. Next bin shows 6. That lot gets pulled from deep storage and packed. Another room reports a rise in internal ethylene. Scrubbers kick on to keep the fruit from waking too fast. The job isn't to freeze time, it's to slow it and keep every lot on the ramp you plan. Out of the rooms, the chain stays cold. Apples move to regular refrigeration, get washed, sorted by optical cameras that see color and defects the human eye misses, then hit waxers that lay down the thinnest film, carnauba usually, to guard moisture through the next leg. Boxes stack onto pallets with traceability tags that can tell you which orchard, which day, which room, which door. Trucks back into bays cooled so condensation doesn't form on skins when they hit warmer air. The choreography is unromantic until you taste the result. A shopper in Iowa in May picks up a bag that says USA and believes she's buying fresh. She is fresh as in not processed, not cooked, not bruised, still alive, just not fresh as in yesterday. Those apples slept through winter in a building wired to turn respiration down like a dimmer. The sign that says picked at peak isn't lying, the peak happened. The editing happened after. Meanwhile, CA quietly reshaped the map. Because Washington can meter its crop, New York and Michigan can too. Retailers learned to plan promotions around controlled releases. Shippers learned to avoid dumping. Consumers stopped noticing the calendar. The expectation hardened. Apples should crunch all year. If a store runs out in July, something feels wrong. There's humility baked in. CA can't fix hail pox or rescue fruit harvested too late. It won't make a bland strain sing. It rewards the sturdy and punishes the fragile. So heirlooms that bruise if you glare at them stay local and short season, while varieties designed for the room ride cross-country. The romance didn't die, it was rooted. Farm stands still taste like weekends. The grocery store tastes like a plan. In the end, apples taught the system how to stop time without lying outright. The lie, if there is one, is that we learned to prefer the feeling of always over the truth of now, and built rooms that could deliver it on demand. Grapes, a hemisphere handoff. While apples sleep and bananas follow a timetable, grapes survive on choreography across latitudes. In November, the Andes send meltwater down into Chile's Aconcagua Valley. Vines wake into summer as North America slides toward winter. That's the first handoff. One hemisphere bows out, the other steps in. On farms outside San Felipe, crews move fast under cold air jets inside packing rooms where time isn't stopped, just slowed. Clusters roll over belts, loose berries drop through grates, workers trim shoulders so the fruit looks like a postcard and fits a punnet. The room hums at near freezing, humidity high, because grapes don't keep if they warm up, even for an hour. Stakes are simple. Grapes don't ripen once cut. There's no CA room that rescues texture months later. What you pick is what you sell, and what you mishandle you lose. So the action is precision plus speed. Lots get tagged, scanned, logged. Some farms license late-season varieties bred for shelf life. Autumn Crisp, Sweet Globe, crosses designed to hold firmness and resist shatter without tasting like plastic. They're not science fiction. They're insurance policies with crunch. Boxes stack onto pallets, each tucked with a perforated liner that breathes just enough. Some exporters slip in a sulfur dioxide pad to suppress mold on the trip, a faint chemical firewall against the wet world of cold storage. A clock starts, 6 days from harvest to ship if you want a clean arrival. Containers arrive cold. 20 pallets load into a 40-foot reefer set just above freezing. Doors close, seals click, and the farm disappears behind a steel wall that is both lifeline and liability. Impact shows up thousands of miles north. From Valparaiso, ships clear the Pacific, cut through the Panama Canal, and climb the Caribbean to Philadelphia. That city became a quiet gateway because decades ago regulators drew a line on a map to keep warm weather pests away. Ports north of that line built the plugs, the fumigation tents, the inspection lines, the cold rooms you need to handle delicate cargo in winter. The ships dock, inspectors open doors, you see whether the first handoff held. Bloom on the berry skin, natural powder means handling was gentle. Sweating stems warn you the chain broke somewhere. Buyers can spot it in seconds. Rejections aren't moral judgments, they're math on moisture and mold. Meanwhile, the choreography continues inland. Some pallets head to fumigation to clear a quarantine hitchhiker without cooking the fruit, others go straight to wholesalers. A split case lands on a terminal stall. A buyer pinches a berry, listens for snap, checks the rachis for green. He writes a check or he doesn't. The stakes are that blunt because the clock is too. Unlike apples, grapes won't forgive you for asking them to wait. By May, chili's flow thins. The second handoff begins. Trucks cross Sonora into Nogales, Arizona, loaded with Mexican grapes that fill June. Then the map tilts again. Coachella's early heat ripens California's first clusters. By summer, the San Joaquin Valley carries almost the entire American appetite. 99% of U.S. table grapes come from this basin, a conveyor belt of sun and irrigation that runs until fall. 3 sources, 1 expectation, no gaps. The bridge works because each span overlaps the next by design. What nobody sees on the sign is the cost of holding that bridge. Philadelphia maintains fumigation bays because inspectors still sometimes find Chilean red mite. Reefers carry not just cold but traceability, a barcode that ties back to a block on a farm 6,000 miles away. A missed temp alarm in the Caribbean can turn a profitable load into a loss by Delaware, and every step favors fruit that can take a bump and stay pretty. That's why breeding matters here too. Late season crunch isn't an accident. It's a response to a calendar that doesn't forgive softness. Micro-stories keep it human. A packhouse manager in Valparaiso pulls a cluster and sees a feather of gray at the shoulder. He stops the line, changes pads, drops the room a degree, because one mold bloom on a pallet can bloom in a container. A longshoreman in Philly feels warm air roll out of a box. He flags it, moves that lot first. A produce buyer in Boston tastes one berry, then another, then looks at the stem and buys the pallet for Saturday because Friday will be cold and foot traffic light. None of them will ever meet the family that eats those grapes. But they're the reason that family sees summer in February and doesn't think twice. The handoff isn't a lie, it's a relay. The baton is cold, clean, and on time, or it is. And when it is, the aisle looks like nature forgot to rest. The cold chain, from shade to shelf. The moment produce leaves a stem, a clock starts. The only way to slow it is to get that heat out fast. On a farm that knows the drill, the first cold chain link isn't a machine, it's shade. Pickers move early, staging bins under tarps so sunlight doesn't load fruit with field heat. Plastic field crates have slats so air can move. Piles are kept low so weight doesn't bruise the bottom layer. Those choices buy minutes that become days later. Pre-cooling comes next. For leafy greens, that's vacuum cooling. Loads go into a steel chamber, pressure drops, water evaporates inside the leaves, and the product sheds heat in minutes without turning soggy. For berries and grapes, it's forced air tunnels, pallets wrapped so fans pull cold through every box. For melons or citrus, hydrocoolers circulate chilled water across rinds that can take it. The principle stays the same, pull temperature down quickly to the commodity's sweet spot. If you miss that first window, no later heroics can bring back what softened on a loading dock. Then it's about unbroken custody. Pre-cooled product hits a packhouse that's already cold. Doors are docked to airtight seals, so the inside of a truck becomes an extension of the room, not a blast of afternoon. Wash water is chilled, brushes are soft, and lines are set to a pace that handles without bruising. Coatings, if they're used, go on inside this climate so dry times are predictable. Quality control is constant. Random pulp temperature checks, humidity logged, airflow kept laminar so cold isn't just in the room, it's through the product. A reefer truck isn't a refrigerator on wheels, it's a heat remover that keeps cold where you put it. That's why load plans matter. Warm air rises so stacks are spaced to allow return flow. Floor channels aren't blocked. Pallet patterns leave headspace so the unit can circulate air, not just blast the back row into icicles. Drivers get told the set point, but also the limits. Don't open the door for a curious consignee. Don't idle in the sun with the unit off. Every door swing is a heat event. Every heat event shortens life. At a port built for perishables, reefers plug into shore power so compressors don't rely on diesel alone. Plugs are scarce on generic ships, so exporters book on vessels with reefer capacity or run their own. Monitoring systems feed temperature data to screens miles away. Alarms flag small drifts before they become claims. If a container warms en route, the receiving team triages it first. The cold chain isn't a straight line. It's triage at every step, guided by numbers and eyes. Cold storage facilities are plain on the outside and engineered on the inside. Floors are insulated, racking is spaced for airflow, and doors have air curtains to strip warm air off forklifts as they pass. Zones are set for different commodities, near freezing for apples, slightly warmer for bananas that shouldn't chill, higher humidity for leafy items that desiccate in dry air. Data loggers track ambient and pulp temperatures. Food safety plans layer on sanitation schedules so cold, clean, and dry coexist. The enemy here isn't only warmth, it's condensation. Water invites mold. Good operators balance humidity to reduce shrivel without sweating boxes. Traceability rides along the cold. Barcodes tie pallets to lots, lots to orchards, orchards to blocks. If a load goes out of spec, you can trace back to a valve that failed or a door that was left ajar at 2 a.m. That accountability is insurance and instruction. It also builds trust. A buyer who knows you can pinpoint a misstep is more likely to buy again. Distribution centers add one more layer, matching temperature to turnover. Ripening rooms for bananas sit one way, deep chill for berries sits another. Dock assignments minimize time in ambient air. Workers stage outbound loads so cold trucks hit cold bays, doors open once, and product goes straight to store coolers. The choreography is about seconds because seconds add up to shelf days. At the store, the cold chain meets its most fragile link, humans. A produce clerk rotates stock so yesterday's strawberries don't die under today's stack. Misters on greens run on timers so leaves don't drown. Displays are built shallow for fast turnover rather than mountain high for optics. Back rooms have thermometers that someone actually reads. A manager chooses not to wheel a pallet through the bakery's hot aisle. Small choices at the end of the chain respect all the expensive choices at the start. Meanwhile, technology keeps widening the safety net. Some trucks stream real-time location and temperature data to a dashboard. Some warehouses run on algorithms that reorder before an item warms on a pallet jack. But it still comes down to people reading numbers and believing them. Cold chain failures don't announce themselves. They accumulate in subtle ways. The grape that sweats at dawn, the avocado that blackens at the shoulder, the cucumber that goes spongy by day 3. If the chain held, that doesn't happen. Shade, pre-cool, pack cold, move cold, store cold, sell cold. The steps aren't glamorous and they aren't secrets. They're a discipline. And when the discipline holds, fresh isn't yesterday, it's 1,000 good decisions between a field and your hand. Safety versus freshness. Nutrients, light, and time. There's a second quiet system under the cold chain, one that decides not just whether fruit looks fresh, but whether it still feeds you the way you think it does. The moment produce is picked, it keeps breathing. That never stops. What we do after harvest either turns that breath into a slow whisper or lets it burn through fuel and flavor. And the same tools that keep food safe and marketable can also change what's inside the bite. Start with light. In a dairy case years ago, milk sat in clear glass because it looked honest. Then retailers learned that light, especially UV and even fluorescent, knocks vitamins apart. Vitamin A, vitamin D, riboflavin, even delicate vitamin C all fade under steady exposure. So jugs went opaque. It wasn't a marketing whim, it was nutrient triage. The same rule applies across produce aisles. Oils and pigments in foods react to light and oxygen, making peroxides that smell rancid and push cells toward stress. That's part of why packaging matters. A good package isn't just pretty, it's armor against photons and air. Now temperature. Keep cold isn't only about rot, it's chemistry. Lowering temperature slows the enzymes that turn starch to sugar and acids to flatness. An orange nectar shipped warm will brown faster and lose ascorbic acid, even if the cap never opens. A grape allowed to ride a degree high for a day won't ripen, but its texture will soften and its bloom will sweat off, trading snap for mush. You don't see the enzymes, but you taste their clock. Controlled atmosphere rooms make this explicit. Drop oxygen to a sliver and you put a fruit's metabolism on idle. That can preserve acids and crispness for months, great for flavor and safety, but it also means the fruit's nutrient chemistry stays paused where you trapped it. That's good news for vitamin C and phenolics that would have oxidized at higher oxygen. It's also why opening the door too fast matters. A sudden rush of air and warmth can wake those enzymes hard, and losses that would have taken months happen in days. Coatings sit in the same paradox. A thin carnauba layer slows water loss and gas exchange. Moisture stays in, the surface resists shrivel. Under that jacket, the fruit cells aren't gasping. They're steady, which is better for both looks and nutrients that hate swings. But sealed too tight and the inside goes anaerobic. Off flavors, internal browning, texture collapse. The trick is semi-permeable. Enough breath to keep cells alive, enough barrier to keep the outside world from accelerating decay. When it's tuned right, the coating is less makeup than a windbreaker for a marathoner. Then there's the invisible safety layer. Packhouses fight fungi in a wet, cold environment. Post-harvest fungicides, hot water dips for organics, sanitation schedules, sulfur dioxide pads for grapes. These are targeted moves against losses that ripple through inventories and into prices. Do they show up on taste? Not if used within strict limits and washed and aired properly. Do they change nutrients? Not like heat and light do. The bigger nutrient swings still come from the physics. Temperature, oxygen, time. Microstories make it plain. In a Chilean pack room, a manager notices browning on an apple's cut surface after a starch test. The room's too warm. Phenolics are oxidizing faster than they should. He drops the thermostat a degree, opens airflow, and the next lot holds its color. In Philadelphia, inspectors pull a milk sample from an opaque jug under bright LEDs. The label still meets its vitamin guarantee because the bottle blocked the light's reach. In a ripening room, a tech vents ethylene early when an avocado lot shows shoulder blackening, a sign that pulp has warmed somewhere. The fix isn't chemical, it's timing and temperature. Freshness, the way we sell it, is two promises braided together. One is safety, no pathogens, no runaway molds, no spoilage from a broken cold chain. The other is nutrition, the vitamins, acids, and pigments that make a bite feel alive. The same systems protect both, but they negotiate trade-offs. Light blocking keeps vitamins, it hides color. Low oxygen saves crunch and slows loss. It selects for varieties that tolerate the nap. Wax prevents shrivel, too much can suffocate flavor. None of that is sinister. It's engineering in service of food that can travel. So when a sign says kept fresh, sometimes it means kept safe and protected from the big thieves, heat, oxygen, and light. And when you bite into a crisp apple in June, you're tasting a quiet win against those thieves. The lie isn't that the food was preserved. It's that we taught ourselves to hear fresh and imagine yesterday while the system is fighting for something harder. Edible truth weeks or months later, under lights inside a package after time tried to take its cut. Power, price, and who gets fresh? Follow the cold chain long enough and it stops looking like food and starts looking like power. Cold costs money, plugs at the port, diesel for reefers, rooms that sip electricity day and night, compressors that don't get Sundays off. Every degree held below ambient is a bill someone has to pay, and the question is whether the system can keep food fresh. It's who can afford for it to be fresh for them. Start on a balance sheet. Each dollar you spend on food, very little reaches the farm. Processing, transport, storage, retail, food service, those layers take most of it. Cold chain sits inside that middle, quietly inflating the value of anything it touches. If you can hold apples 10 months, you can sell into price, not desperation. If you can't, you're stuck at the glut. The rooms aren't just machines, they're time arbitrage. Owners with capital smooth their cash flow. Growers without it sell early and pray. The map reflects that. Ports with reefer plugs and inspection bays draw traffic. Philadelphia leans into cold and picks up grapes each winter. San Diego offers a quiet berth and a Sunday rhythm, so a banana company builds a private pier. Those dots become gravity wells. Regions without cold capacity don't export perishables at scale. They export shelf-stable things, grain, oil, canned, dried, or they export people to jobs inside someone else's cold chain. Meanwhile, energy prices ripple through flavor. Electricity spikes and a pack house raises its turn speed. Rooms don't run as cold, fruit moves faster, quality margins shrink. Diesel jumps and a retailer tightens orders, taking greener bananas to buy days and shifting risk to households. Cheap energy, the chain loosens a notch, promos run longer, and abundance feels normal. None of this is about taste buds. It's kilowatt hours dictating what ripeness you can buy. There's a social layer tucked in. In cities, full-service groceries map onto income. Wealthier neighborhoods get deep assortments, frequent deliveries, and produce managers who cull hard. The cold chain ends at a case that's always full, and rotation happens before flavor drops. Across town, a store with thin margins stretches the same pallet longer. Misters run too much. Doors hang open. Strawberries go off by Wednesday. It's the same variety, same brand, different end of the chain. Quality becomes a function of zip code. Food deserts aren't just about distance, they're about time. If the truck comes twice a week, fresh has to last until the next run. Greens need to withstand warmer back rooms. Fruit needs thicker skin, literally and figuratively. The assortment shrinks to commodities that survive neglect. Bananas that tolerate a warm aisle, apples that were waxed well and slept long, potatoes that don't care. Choice narrows to what logistics can guarantee under stress. Then look outward, where countries buy food from each other like insurance policies. When a war locks a grain port, bread prices rise in cities far away. When fertilizer spikes, yields drop next season for farmers who can't front the cost. The following year, prices climb again, and importers with deeper pockets outbid poorer states. The same pattern runs through perishables. If your government built cold terminals and trained inspectors, your retailers can swim in global season. If not, you wait, or you pay more for domestic stopgaps. Commodity dependence pulls strings you don't see. If a region leans on one export crop to earn dollars, coffee, cocoa, palm, it buys imported perishables at whatever the market says this week. Currency slides, the cold chain constricts, and the aisle grows monotone. Meanwhile, exporters of high-margin produce invest in on-farm shade, pre-coolers, vacuum tunnels, traceability, each improvement a rung on a ladder that lifts quality for buyers who can pay. Value climbs uphill. Micro-stories remind you this isn't theory. A co-op in a hot valley buys a used vacuum cooler and sells lettuce 2 towns farther without losing crisp. A city market swaps open-air trucks for reefers, and suddenly cherries can land at dawn and still look like jewelry at noon. A rural clinic gets a solar freezer. Vaccines stay potent. The same cold discipline that keeps bananas green protects lives. Cold isn't just about taste. It's about who benefits when time bends. Ask a household on the edge about choices. The cheapest calories aren't in the cold case. They're dried, refined, shelf-stable, and heavily advertised. If your budget is tight, always available wins. The cold chain can make a head of broccoli last a week in a store, but it still demands a kitchen, a fridge at home, time to cook. So the system that stretches seasons also widens gaps between those who can use the stretch and those who can only watch it. Price tags tell part of it. Labels tell almost nothing. Product of USA on an apple means a long, expensive chain worked well. Fresh bananas means a synchronized continent met its marks. In both cases, power paid for predictability. If you can't buy into that predictability because of energy, infrastructure, income, you get what survives without it. That's not an accident. It's design we mistook for nature. The 100-year build. From ice to industrial food science. To see how fresh became a promise instead of a fact, start with ice. Before compressors, railroads packed northern lakes in winter, sawing blocks and shipping them south under sawdust. In the 187s and 188s, railcars learned a simple trick. Ice bunkers on each end, vents to pull cold air over carcasses and produce. It wasn't precision, but it let beef travel from Chicago and lettuces roll a little farther than a horse cart. Fresh meant within reach of an ice house. Then machines replaced lakes. Early 20th century ammonia systems turned ice into an on-demand utility. By the 192s and 193s, reefers, mechanically refrigerated railcars, were routine. Citrus could ride from California to New York. Meat could cross summer without spoiling. The chain was crude by today's standards. Hot loading docks, leaky doors, but temperature became a controllable variable, not just hope and haste. War accelerated everything. World War II demanded food that kept canned, dehydrated, frozen, shipped across oceans without rotting. Engineers standardized compressors, evaporators, insulation. After the war, those parts flowed into civilian life. Suburbs got home fridges and freezers, trucks got better units, highways stitched regions together. Cold moved from an emergency measure to infrastructure. Meanwhile, the grocery store changed shape. Self-service aisles replaced the clerked counters. Fluorescent lights, long hours, deep assortments. Stores sold faith that anything you wanted could be found any day. Back rooms grew compressors and walk-ins. Open-top freezers made frozen food a culinary category, not a novelty. The promise shifted from today's catch to today's selection, and selection demanded systems. Containerization in the 195s and 196s made distance cheap and predictable. Steel boxes stacked on ships turned ports into plug-and-play nodes. Refrigerated containers added a new trick: portable climates with their own compressors and controllers. A banana could sit in a metal room at 13 degrees C for 9 days and emerge unchanged. A pallet of grapes could hover just above freezing from Valparaiso to Philadelphia. Cold left buildings and climbed onto decks and trailers. At the same time, food science stepped out of the lab and into packing sheds. Researchers mapped respiration curves and ethylene sensitivity, wrote charts that told operators exactly how fast a variety breathes and where chilling injury begins. Controlled atmosphere was the leap. Airtight rooms that lowered oxygen to 2 or 3%, held carbon dioxide steady, and pushed temperature just above freezing. Apples didn't just get cold, they went metabolic idle. An orchard's value could be spread across a year without turning to sauce. Surface science followed. Wax wasn't a cosmetic flourish, it was physics. Wash water stripped fruit's natural cuticle. Waxes, carnauba, shellac went back onto slow transpiration and exchange. Post-harvest fungicides applied within strict tolerances cut loss in humid, cold environments where mold thrives. For organic lines, hot water dips and sanitation tightened. Ethylene found its second act in ripening rooms. The same gas suppressed in transit was pulsed in at parts per million to synchronize color for a weekend ad. Logistics married these tools. Ports built reefer plugs and inspection bays. Some exporters ran their own terminals and ships because generic capacity couldn't guarantee schedule or power. Distribution centers learned ripening as a craft. Software tracked lots, gas levels, pulp temperatures. Forklifts moved through air curtains so door swings didn't undo a day's discipline. The chain hardened from suggestion to procedure. Policy and marketing locked it in. The USDA wrote grades, inspection protocols, phytosanitary rules. Retailers built private standards tighter than government minimums, so suppliers invested to keep shelf space. Labels simplified the complexity, kept fresh, picked at peak, product of USA, so the story fit a sign. Meanwhile, breeders shifted targets. Traits like storage tolerance, late harvest, thicker cuticles, resistance to scald became as valuable as sugar and aroma. A variety that couldn't handle rooms, brushes, trucks, and lights had a short commercial life. By the 198s and 199s, the cold chain wasn't a novelty, it was the backbone. Supercenters spanned regions and demanded identical quality from Maine to New Mexico. Global sourcing became a season-bridging reflex. Winter grapes, Chile, shoulder bananas, Guatemala, early apples, New York, late apples, Washington, all braided by climate control and timing. Then data layered on. Temperature loggers rode pallets and streamed curves to dashboards. A spike in the Caribbean could be triaged in Delaware. Traceability moved from clipboards to barcodes to cloud systems. A recall didn't shutter an industry. It narrowed to a lot, a room, an hour. Food safety programs, HACCP third-party audits made process discipline as important as flavor. You could be right and safe and still lose a sale if your numbers weren't clean. The last mile adopted the same habits. Stores built more cold back rooms, rotated harder, misted smarter, trained clerks to read ripeness like ripeners. Consumers adapted, too. Home fridges got crisper drawers. Recipes stopped caring what month it was. Seasonal became an aesthetic, not a constraint. That's the build, from ice ponds to engineered air, from guesswork to controlled atmospheres, from harvest windows to calendars drawn by compressors and breeding programs. Not a conspiracy, but a century of choices that replaced nature's schedule with ours and taught us to call it fresh. The branding of fresh. By the time the system could deliver always, the marketing made it feel natural. Fresh wasn't a condition anymore, it was a logo. A drop of dew printed on a bag, a field in soft focus behind a word like farm, picked at peak in a font that looks like handwriting. None of these lines tell you the date, they tell you a feeling. Walk the perimeter of any store and you'll hear the script. Local when possible, seasonal selection, kept fresh. The copy never lies outright, it just collapses months and miles into a single aisle. A sticker that says USA on an apple speaks to origin, not timing. A sign over bananas says ripe for the weekend, and it's true because someone pulsed ethylene on Monday. The brand of Fresh is confidence. We're not selling a harvest, we're selling relief from doubt. Design carries it. Greens sit under misters that hiss like morning. Woodgrain fixtures suggest crates at a market, even if they're laminate on steel. Chalkboard fonts, faux hand lettering twine around a bundle, signals that whisper unprocessed inside a building run by compressors and barcodes. Packages do the same. Clear film windows show the product without revealing the light that bleaches vitamins. Opaque milk jugs protect nutrients while labels sketch a pasture. The protection is science. The picture is story. Retailers learned early that language could soothe trade-offs. Wax to maintain freshness turns a moisture barrier into care, not chemistry. No preservatives appears on produce that never needed them, letting the store borrow virtue from the obvious. Non-GMO floats above fruit bred by years of cross-pollination to fit rooms, brushes, and trucks. The message doesn't fight the system, it accessorizes it. Brands invest in origin myths because time is messy, place is simple. A Washington apple feels more real than an apple from a controlled atmosphere. A Costa Rican banana sounds more honest than an engineered ripening curve. So ads highlight regions, valley, coast, highland, while operations highlight metrics, pulp, temp, oxygen, soluble solids. The narrative and the spreadsheet run in parallel and they barely nod. Meanwhile, certifications became trust stand-ins. Organic means no synthetic pesticides within strict rules. It doesn't mean the fruit didn't sleep in a CA room. Fair trade speaks to wages and community. It doesn't speak to ethylene schedules. Sourced responsibly can include private terminals and reefer fleets if labor and environmental boxes are checked. None of this is cynicism. It's segmentation. You meet values while keeping calendar. Micro-stories appear in the margins, engineered for Instagram. A card introduces Maria, third-generation grower, standing in a sunlit row. She does exist. Her fruit also sat in a room for 6 months so it could meet your February craving. A short video shows from field to store in 24 hours, true for a particular leafy green on a particular route. Next to it, a bin of lemons might have traveled weeks with a wax jacket and a quarantine fumigation. The aisle flattens time. The feed humanizes it. The words consumers use complete the loop. Fresh becomes not canned, not frozen, not cooked, not ugly. It's a negative definition, easier to brand than to date stamp. Ask for ripe and you get color, not bricks. Ask for farm fresh and you get a display with burlap under refrigerated air. We trained ourselves to prefer cues that logistics can deliver daily. Shine, color, snap, mist. Flavor and season do show up. Peaches still measure summers. But most days, brand beats calendar. Price tags help the illusion hold. Promotions create rhythm where harvests used to. Berry Blast Week in January rides chili. Apple Fest in May rides rooms. Banana Bonanza runs whenever the ripening rooms have capacity. We experience seasons as marketing cycles because marketing cycles are easier to plan than weather. There's honesty inside this if you look. Backroom labels list pack dates. Some retailers now add varietal specifics and storage notes. A few chains experiment with in-season now badges that admit a gap elsewhere. The industry knows the system can feel antiseptic. It tries here and there to give time a cameo. But the core promise remains, we'll keep nature consistent. The brand of Fresh works because the chain makes it true, true enough to trust, polished enough to forget how it's done. The ones that got away, peaches, cherries, and trust. Every system has its holdouts, fruits that won't bend to rooms, wax, or schedules without losing the thing that makes them worth chasing. Peaches and cherries didn't sign the contract. They taste like summer because they live like it, thin-skinned, high respiration, bruised by a glance. You can slow their clock a little with shade and cold, but not enough to stretch July into January without paying in texture and perfume. The aisle solves that by shrinking their time, not extending it. The cost is trust. Start with a peach. It's built for a short life. Velvety skin that scuffs, flesh that softens as pectin loosens, aroma compounds that whistle off as soon as cell walls relax. Pick it too early and it never develops the sugars or scent you're hoping for. Pick it late and one car ride turns it to jam against the box wall. CA rooms won't save it. Low oxygen risks internal browning and woolliness. Waxes don't do much on fuzz. Fungicides can tamp down rot, but they can't undo bruises from a busy pack line. The right peach arrives because people showed restraint and speed, harvested at dawn, cooled fast, moved gently, sold quickly. That kind of care is hard to industrialize. Cherries are tougher in personality, but physically fragile. Turgid skin gives snap. Stems tell the story. Green means cold and fast. Brown means heat sneaked in. Hydrocooling and forced air matter. Water's chilled, bins are shallow, sorters are padded. Still, the margin is razor thin. A warm hour puts pits on a path to pitting. A few missed stems in a warm hallway become brown rot by Monday. There's no ripening room to fix color later. What left the orchard is what you get. Meanwhile, shoppers remember a handful of perfect bites and spend the rest of the season trying to find them again. That's where trust frays. A gorgeous peach that smells like nothing teaches caution. A bag of cherries with soft shoulders after 2 days teaches avoidance. Over time, habits shift. People who have burned 2 summers running stop gambling and reach for a backup. Apples that snap on demand, bananas that behave. The system notices and doubles down on what cooperate. Micro-stories show the stakes. A Georgia grower walks a block and tastes one fruit every few trees, looking for that edge where sugars are up but flesh still travels. He leaves money on the limb rather than ship green. At the shed, he slows the line and loses throughput because a foam pad outlasts the fruit it protects. A wholesaler in Dallas takes delivery under a heat dome and refuses 2 pallets because the pulp temps red 3 degrees high. He knows his customers will call by Wednesday. A local market posts a sign, "These brews, if you breathe on them, handle like eggs." They sell out by noon because the warning feels like care. The cold chain can help, but it can't change the nature of the fruit. Shade, pre-cool, fast turns, those work. Deep storage, long voyages, hard brushes, those don't. So peaches and cherries stay seasonal in truth even if they appear here and there out of step, imported by air at prices that prove the rule. Breeding has tried to meet logistics halfway. Firmer flesh, thicker cuticles, crack-resistant. Gains are real, but every step toward durability risks stepping away from the melting texture that makes a peach a peach. Push too far and you keep shelf life, lose loyalty. Trust is more than taste, it's pattern. If 3 peaches in a row disappoint, a customer stops believing the sign that says tree ripened. If a cherry promotion lands with stem browning and soft snaps, the banner reads as noise. Retailers fight that with hyperspecificity, named varieties, harvest windows, local maps on a chalkboard. When the fruit sings, they tell you why. When it doesn't, they move on fast. The lesson is quiet but hard. Some things don't scale without losing themselves. In a store built on always, these fruits remind you what now feels like. They make the aisle honest for a few weeks a year. And they make everything else, rooms, wax, ripening gas, look like a choice we made to never be disappointed again. Who pays, who gains? Economics of freshness. Follow the dollar and the glow on the fruit starts to look like margin. Cold, coatings, rooms, plugs, none of it is free. Each layer takes a cut and together they decide who gets stability and who rents it by the week. Start at the farm. A grower without capital sells when the bins are full. The glut drags the price down and cash comes in once hard. A grower with access to a CA room turns bins into a calendar. He pays for compressors and monitoring, but he sells into March, May, July. That's not just higher prices. It's cash flow spread across payrolls, fuel, repairs. The room is a machine that converts perishability into time value. Owners gain resilience. Renters take what the market gives them and hope. Packhouses sit at the toll booth. Pre-cool, wash, wax, cull, box. Each step adds labor, energy, chemistry, and a fee. On paper, it's a few cents per pound. Across millions of pounds, it's the business. Margins are thin, so volume is religion. Lose a pallet to mold and your month leans red. Keep mold down and temp curves flat and your loss rate slides from 5% to 2%. That swing is profit. The partial truth in maintains freshness is that it really protects inventory. The protection pays the packhouse first, then everyone downstream. Reefer fleets and cold warehouses monetize distance and delay. A standard dry container is cheap, a reefer with monitoring is not. But the reefer buys you predictability. It lets you write contracts with delivery windows you can meet and penalties you can avoid. Ports with plugs and inspection barns charge more. They also get the traffic that can pay. Philadelphia took that bet and turned into a winter fruit gateway. Cities without the gear watch cargo sale pass to places that can keep it cold and clear it fast. Infrastructure becomes destiny. Retail sits where the chain meets the shopper, and here the math is ruthless. Full assortment and tight rotation aren't charity, they are customer retention. The store that eats shrink to keep displays perfect steals basket share from the one that stretches a pallet into Sunday. A retailer that invests in ripening rooms for bananas owns the weekend ad cycle, one that doesn't buys color on the truck and lives with whatever shows up. price signals tell you who's doing which. Everyday low on bananas isn't altruism. It's a traffic engine fueled by backroom control. Household economics spill into the case. If you're counting dollars, you buy predictability over promise. Bananas and apples are cheap, consistent, forgiving. They leverage a mature system and pass some of the efficiency along. Peaches and cherries ask you to gamble. One bad week teaches a lesson and the basket tilts back toward what behaves. Over years, that moves market share and breeders follow money. Traits that keep costs down, storage tolerance, firm flesh, wax-friendly skins, win funding. Fragile thrillers become farmers' market stories, not chain staples. Global shocks expose who was buying stability and who was borrowing it. A war chokes a grain corridor. Fertilizer prices spike. Diesel climbs. Exporters with private terminals or priority berths keep sailing. Those in general lanes wait and watch fruit age. Importers with currency strength outbid neighbors for reefers and plug space. Those with thin reserves trim orders, accept greener fruit, and shift risk to households. When supply is tight, the middle with the best logistics makes the spread. There's also the geography of access. Cold chain favors nodes, ports, highways, distribution centers with scale. That creates deserts by omission. If your town sits off route, deliveries are less frequent, rotation slows, and the same item lives two lives, one snapping on one side of the city, one tired on the other. The price might match, the experience doesn't. Freshness becomes a function of network design layered on income and time. Micro-stories make the ledger personal. A cooperative scrapes together a loan for a vacuum cooler and wins a new buyer because their lettuce can travel sunrise to lunch without wilting. A small shipper loses a container to a power outage at a transshipment port and spends 6 months arguing the claim. A retailer tightens spec on stem color for grapes and forces suppliers to add cold capacity or lose shelf space. Each decision moves money up or down the line. Who pays? Everyone touches the meter. Growers in energy bills, packers in chemistry and labor, shippers in reefer rates, retailers in shrink, households in price and trust. Who gains? Those who can turn cost into control, who convert perishability into schedule, schedule into contracts, contracts into loyal baskets. The glow on a polished apple is a story about taste. The spreadsheet behind it is a story about power. Cracks in the illusion. How to read freshness. If the aisle is a stage, there are tells. Start with labels you already ignore. On apples, look past the variety and country and hunt for the pack date. It hides on a case code or a tiny sticker on the bag. May pack on a Washington apple doesn't mean may harvest. It means a room opened and a calendar moved. That's not a crime, it's context. If you spot 2 bags side by side, choose the more recent pack. Same orchard, different wake-up. Bananas speak in color and seam lines. Greens with a hint of yellow at the ridge say they were gassed recently and will break over the next 2 days. Fully yellow with green tips are at cruise speed. Freckling means flavor today, risk tomorrow. What you can't see is the clock the room started. What you can use is your week. Buy the mix your kitchen needs. 1 yellow for the morning, a few greener for Thursday. The schedule is yours to set now, not theirs. Grapes tell you their travel in the stem. Bright green rachis, cool to the touch, means the chain held. Olive stems or browning at the shoulders mean warmth stole hours somewhere. Bloom, the pale dust on skins, is not dirt. It's a natural wax that signals gentle handling. If you see sweating inside the bag, the truck or the store case ran warm and cold in cycles. That moisture is mold's first foothold. Shake a clamshell lightly. Too many loose berries. That's shatter from rough lines or old age. Leafy greens are timing in a fog. Misters are theater and function. If leaves feel waterlogged or edges pink at the cut, the cycle's long or the product's old. Look at ribs on romaine, snappy, white, no translucence. Spinach with yellowing veins has lived too long out of deep cold. Bagged salads carry a use-by date that's real. Gases inside are tuned to that window. If there's puffing, the seal failed or the microbes are working. That bag is a tiny lab report. Citrus hides its age better. Weight is truth. 2 oranges the same size, take the heavy one. Water loss is time. Heft means the peel still holds juice. Tiny pores on the rind look tight when fresh. Coarse and dry means it has exhaled for weeks. Lemons with soft shoulders were stacked warm. Limes that gloss like plastic are freshly waxed. That's fine, but smell the stem end. If there's no perfume, the fruit is alive but quiet. Avocados show their history in the shoulder. A black ring just under the skin near the stem says the pulp warmed and browned internally. You can't fix that. Choose by feel under the nub, not by color alone. If the stem cap pops clean and green, you're in good shape. If it's brown, that fruit is ahead of you. Ripeness you can manage on your counter. Damage you can't. Milk taught the aisle one honest habit: opaque jugs. In bright cases, choose those tucked a row back, shielded by their neighbors from constant light. The vitamin panel is a promise if the package can keep it. It can, just don't leave it under a kitchen lamp or in a glass pitcher. Photons take their cut. At the store level, watch rotation. Full stacks aren't always fresh, they're sometimes inertia. The best operators face produce, cull hard, and build shallow displays that turn fast. If strawberries are piled high at 5 p.m., ask yourself who will buy them by 9. A case that looks a little worked through can be safer than one staged for a photo. Micro moves matter. Bring an insulated bag. The hottest place for your fruit is your car at noon. Stop by the produce on the way out, not on the way in. At home, don't wash berries until you eat them. Moisture is invitation. Keep apples cold. Keep bananas out of the fridge until they've colored. Store ethylene lovers away from ethylene givers if you're trying to stretch days. You're not fighting the system, you're partnering with it at the end. And sometimes pick the sign that admits a limit. In season now is a rare, honest label. It means flavor over schedule. If you can, buy a week of that. Let peaches be July again. Let cherries be June. The rest of the year, read the tells, set your kitchen's clock, and know that fresh can be true and complicated at the same time. Rewiring fresh. Better chains, fairer access. If the last century taught us how to bend time, the next one has to decide who gets the benefit. Cold, rooms, wax, gas, those are tools. Fairness is design. Start at the farm edge where minutes become days. Shade and pre-coolers shouldn't be luxuries. A co-op can buy one vacuum cooler and turn a valley's lettuce from a Tuesday-only product into something that rides to Friday without shame. Grants that once paid for tractors can underwrite first-mile cold. Top sheds, forced air tunnels, clean water, and basic hygiene that prevents loss before it needs chemistry. Power is the bottleneck. You don't rewire access without rewiring energy. Solar on packhouses and rural clinics already keeps vaccines cold. The same arrays can run small pre-coolers and lights. Hybrid reefers that plug into shore power and sip diesel only when moving cut costs and emissions. At ports, plugs are policy. Add them and you unlock exporters who can't gamble on a generator. Skip them and you ration fresh to whoever can afford a private terminal. Data can be democratized. Temperature loggers used to be expensive and opaque. Now a palm-sized sensor can ride a pallet for a few dollars and broadcast a curve to a phone. That curve is leverage for a grower arguing a claim, and instruction for a driver who doesn't realize a door swing at noon erased a day of cold. The point isn't surveillance, it's shared diagnostics. When everyone in the chain can see the same line, the fix stops being blame and starts being process. Retailers are where equity shows. Deliveries to low-income stores don't have to be afterthoughts. Route design can prioritize frequency where rotation is hardest. Specs can flex toward flavor when the season sings. Peaches labeled with harvest windows, not just price points. Back rooms can get small ripening rooms and cheap pulp thermometers. A clerk who knows to keep bananas off the heater and berries out of misters is a cold chain intervention in a t-shirt. Language can help without performing. In season now is a promise you can taste. Stored for quality is an honest label that admits a CA room is a tool, not a trick. Add origin plus pack date on bags. Teach people what it means. Put a map up for cherries in June and a note in February that grapes rode a winter pipeline. Honesty doesn't dull appetite, it builds trust. Breeding and justice can share a field. We don't have to choose between wild fragrance and shelf life, but we can be explicit about the goals we fund. Traits that make room for small growers, disease resistance that cuts fungicide bills, late-season ripening that staggers labor, skins that tolerate gentle handling instead of bruising at a glance, are equity traits. Fund them and you lower the cost of doing things right. And then there's the home link. If a family doesn't have a reliable fridge or time to cook, access is theater. Community fridges stocked with true perishables, EBT incentives that double dollars for produce, corner stores with plug-in coolers financed like sidewalks. These are cold chain extensions into lives, not just aisles. Teach the basics. Don't wash berries until you eat them. Keep apples cold, separate ethylene givers and takers. That's dignity disguised as tips. None of this kills the romance. It makes it available. A chain that starts with shade and ends with a decent, crisper drawer is still a chain, but it's one that admits what fresh costs and spreads the bill. What fresh should mean now? Fresh should mean safe to eat, honest about time, grown and moved with care you can taste and trust. If you want more stories like this, how hidden systems shape what ends up on your plate, subscribe. and watch the next episode to see the supply chain that built your morning coffee. It's closer to these cold rooms than you think.